The observation deck of the Galactic Council Station hummed with the nervous energy of 200 assembled delegates. I pressed my sensory nodes against the transparent barrier, watching the cargo vessel drift closer with all the grace of a dying star. My name is Vex, a diplomatic officer from the Quilnar system, and in my 40 cycles of service, I had witnessed many bizarre human incidents, but nothing could have prepared me for what was about to unfold. They brought their offspring, hissed Kral, my Zenthorian colleague, his scales rippling with obvious distaste, to a military escort mission, across the scorched expanse. Humans, I muttered, adjusting my translation implant. They bring their young everywhere. Last month, one of their toddlers wandered into a fusion reactor control room on Station 12 because it wanted to, and I quote, see the pretty lights. The cargo vessel, designated Wandering Fortune, looked like someone had welded a flying warehouse to a school bus. Its hull bore scorch marks from what I assumed were meteor impacts, pirate attacks, or perhaps aggressive parking. The ship's transponder identified its captain as Marcus Webb, a freight hauler with a reputation for taking contracts that made seasoned pilots fake their own deaths. Council members, announced High Arbiter Thon, his voice booming through the chamber. The human vessel carries Emberius Dawnscale. A collective gasp rippled through the assembly. Several delegates actually fainted. One Praxian representative began praying to 17 different gods simultaneously. Emberius Dawnscale. The name alone could stop wars. The ancient dragon, nearly 15,000 years old, was classified as a catastrophe-class stellar predator. His species had gone extinct millennia ago, but Emberius persisted, a living weapon of mass destruction who occasionally woke from hibernation to remind the galaxy why everyone's ancestors had nightmares about dragons. 3 years ago, a coalition, a fleet of 60 warships had attempted to relocate Emberius from an asteroid field marked for mining. 40 ships never came home. The survivors refused to speak about what happened, though therapists across 5 sectors reported a sudden spike in patients who screamed about the fire that thinks during their sessions. And now, somehow, impossibly, the humans had convinced Emberius to relocate voluntarily. They were transporting him to a designated sanctuary planet called Haven's Rest, a journey that required passing through council space. How did they even approach him without being incinerated? Kral wondered aloud. They probably sent someone with excellent life insurance, I replied. The Wandering Fortune docked with a metallic clang that reverberated through the station. I watched through the viewport as the cargo bay doors opened, revealing the specialized containment pod. It was massive, reinforced with quantum-locked alloys, and surrounded by cooling systems that could freeze a small sun. Captain Webb emerged first. He was a stocky man with graying hair and the kind of weathered face that suggested he'd stared down danger so many times they were now on a first-name basis. Behind him came a woman I assumed was his wife, carrying supplies. And then, skipping out into the docking bay like she owned the entire station, came their daughter. She couldn't have been more than 6 or 7 years old, blonde hair and 2 braids, a dress covered in colorful flowers. She clutched a stuffed animal that looked like it had survived several wars and lost all of them. Please tell me that child is not part of the crew, Kral said, his voice climbing 3 octaves. Captain Webb approached the diplomatic receiving line, his daughter's hand clasped in his. Morning, folks. Name's Marcus Webb. This here's my wife Linda, and our daughter Emma. We're delivering your passenger as agreed. High Arbiter Thon descended from his platform, his ceremonial robes trailing behind him. Captain Webb, we appreciate your service. However, protocol dictates that civilians, especially juveniles, should not be present during the transfer of a catastrophe-class entity. Marcus scratched his beard. Yeah, about that. Emma's been helping with the trip. Emberius seems to like her. The entire observation deck fell silent. I checked my translation implant, convinced it had malfunctioned. I'm sorry, Thon said slowly. Could you repeat that? The dragon likes my kid, Marcus said, as if discussing a particularly friendly dog. Been feeding him those special thermal treats from Core World suppliers. They've become buddies. Emma tugged on her father's sleeve. Daddy, can I say hi to Mr. Scales before we leave? I promised I'd visit him one more time. Every single delegate on that observation deck experienced the same thought simultaneously. A human child had befriended the most dangerous creature in known space. This was either the beginning of a beautiful new era of interspecies cooperation, or the setup for the greatest disaster in galactic history. Probably both. High Arbiter Thon's skin changed colors rapidly, cycling through what I recognized as his species equivalent of a panic attack. Young one, Emberius Dawnscale is extremely dangerous. He has consumed 37 species to extinction. His breath can melt starship hulls. His claws can tear through reality itself when he's particularly irritated. Emma looked up at him with the kind of innocent confusion only children can manage. But he's nice to me. He tells funny stories about when stars were young, and he likes it when I read to him. You read to the dragon, I said, unable to stop myself. Uh-huh. He really likes adventure books. Last week I read him The Brave Little Asteroid Who Could. He cried at the ending. Somewhere in the back of the assembly, a Vraxian philosopher began questioning the fundamental nature of reality. I didn't blame him. I was doing the same thing. Marcus cleared his throat. Look, I know it sounds crazy. When we first got the contract, I thought it was a suicide mission. But Emma wandered into the cargo hold during the loading process, and before I could stop her, she'd introduced herself. Emberius just stopped being hostile, started asking her questions about Earth. They've been chatting ever since. Chatting, Kral repeated weakly. With Emberius Dawnscale. He's actually really lonely, Emma said matter-of-factly. Nobody talks to him anymore because everyone's scared. But he's not mean. He's just big and misunderstood. Emma Webb smiled apologetically. We tried to keep her away, but you know how kids are. Plus, Emberius specifically requested her presence during feeding times. Said she has an interesting perspective on temporal mechanics for someone who hasn't even learned multiplication yet. High Arbiter Thon looked like he needed several drinks and a meditation retreat. This is highly irregular. However, given that Captain Webb has successfully transported Emberius across 9 sectors without incident, something no military force has achieved, I suppose we should trust his methods. Can I see him now? Emma asked, bouncing on her toes. Please? I want to give him the goodbye present I made. The High Arbiter's aide leaned in, whispering urgently. Thon's expression suggested he was weighing the diplomatic nightmare of refusing a human child against the potential catastrophe of allowing her near the dragon. Finally, he sighed. A sound like ancient glaciers cracking. Very well. But under heavy supervision. And if Emberius shows any signs of aggression, he won't, Emma said confidently. He promised to be good during the transfer. We assembled an escort team consisting of 12 armed guards, 6 emergency response specialists, and approximately 30 delegates who claimed they needed to witness this for historical documentation purposes. Truth was, none of us could resist watching this impossible interaction. The containment pod dominated the cargo bay. Cooling vents hissed, releasing clouds of condensed atmosphere. The quantum locks disengaged with a series of mechanical clicks that sounded like the countdown to oblivion. The front panel began to slide open. Heat washed over us immediately. Not the comfortable warmth of a sunny day, but the kind of heat that exists at the heart of dying suns. The guards' energy shields activated automatically, their warning sensors screaming. And then, through the shimmering air, we saw him. Emberius Dawnscale was magnificent and terrifying in equal measure. His scales reflected light in impossible colors, each one the size of a planetary defense shield. His eyes, ancient and knowing, glowed with internal fire. When he breathed, reality seemed to bend slightly around him. Space itself reluctant to get too close. A single claw emerged from the containment pod, each talon longer than our tallest delegate. His head followed, massive and terrible, crowned with horns that had seen civilizations rise and fall. Steam rose from his nostrils. The air tasted of ozone and ancient power. Every guard readied their weapons. Every delegate prepared to run. Every instinct screamed that we were in the presence of death incarnate. And Emma ran forward, arms outstretched, giggling with delight. Mr. Scales, I missed you. The dragon's eyes, each one large enough to swallow a shuttlecraft, focused on the tiny human child running toward him with the enthusiasm of a puppy greeting its owner. His massive head lowered, moving with surprising gentleness. Little spark, Emberius rumbled, his voice resonating through the cargo bay like thunder singing. You kept your promise to visit. Emma reached his snout, and, without hesitation, without fear, Without any sense of self-preservation that should exist in any rational being, she stretched up and kissed the dragon's scaled nose. Time stopped. Every delegate froze. Guards stood motionless, weapons raised but forgotten. High Arbiter Thawne made a sound like a tea kettle achieving consciousness. Kral grabbed my shoulder with enough force to bruise, his claws digging in as if he needed to confirm we were both witnessing the same impossible reality. A human child had just kissed the deadliest predator in the galaxy, an Emberius Dawnscale, ancient destroyer of worlds, eater of stars, the nightmare that made nightmares wake up screaming, closed his eyes and made a sound suspiciously close to a contented purr. "I brought you something," Emma said, pulling a drawing from her pocket. It was crumpled and smudged with crayon, but she held it up proudly. "It's a picture of your new home. See? There's mountains and caves and lots of space to fly. And I drew you some friends because you said you get lonely." Emberius took the drawing with one claw, holding it as carefully as if it were made of spider silk and wishes. He studied it for a long moment, and I could have sworn I saw moisture gathering at the corners of those massive eyes. "It is beautiful, little spark," he said softly. "I will treasure it always. And you'll make friends at your new home, right?" Emma asked seriously. "You have to try. I know you're scary, but if you smile and share and use your indoor fire, people will like you." "Indoor fire? Indoor fire?" I whispered to Kral. I believe she means he shouldn't incinerate things while inside structures. Kral whispered back, his voice shaking. Emberius chuckled, a sound like mountains laughing. "I will endeavor to use my indoor fire, as you suggest. And perhaps, when you are older, you might visit me at this new home. Really? You promise?" "I swear it upon the first flames," Emberius said solemnly. "You have shown me that not all new creatures are consumed by fear and ambition. You see me, truly see me, not as a weapon or a threat, but as simply Emberius. For that gift, little spark, I am eternally grateful." Emma beamed. "You're welcome, and remember, when you feel angry or sad, use your words, not your fire. That's what my teacher says." "Wise counsel," the dragon agreed. "I shall attempt to use my words more often." Marcus Webb stepped forward cautiously. "Emma, sweetie, we need to let them finish the transfer. Mr. Scales needs to get to his new home." "Okay, Daddy." Emma turned back to Emberius. "Goodbye, Mr. Scales. Thank you for being my friend. Goodbye, little spark. May your days be bright, and your adventures many." Emma waved one more time, then skipped back to her parents. Just like that, as if she'd simply said goodbye to a librarian instead of a creature that could crack planets. The transfer continued in stunned silence. Teams guided Emberius to the specialized transport ship prepared for the final leg of his journey. The dragon cooperated fully, even offering helpful suggestions about the most comfortable position for intersystem travel. As the wandering fortune prepared to depart, I found myself standing next to Captain Webb at the docking port. I had to ask, "How?" I said simply. Marcus smiled, watching his daughter wave at the departing transport ship. "You want the truth? I don't really know, but I've learned that Emma sees the world differently. She doesn't see monsters or categories or threat assessments. She just sees people. Or dragons, in this case. And maybe that's what Emberius needed. Someone who saw him as a person. But he's killed millions," I said. "He's destroyed entire civilizations." "Yeah," Marcus agreed. "And he's lived with that for thousands of years. You ever think about how lonely that must be? Being so feared that nobody even tries to know you?" Emma didn't see his past. She saw him, right now, in the present. And she offered him something nobody else ever had. "What's that?" "Friendship. Without conditions. Without fear." Marcus shrugged. "Kids are good at that. They haven't learned to be afraid of the right things yet." The wandering fortune detached from the station, through the viewport. I could see Emma pressed against the window, still waving, and in the distance, the massive transport carrying Emberius performed what I could only describe as a gentle roll, a gesture of acknowledgement. A human child had befriended the galaxy's most dangerous predator by simply being kind. By seeing past the reputation and the fear and offering genuine friendship. It was absurd. It was impossible. It was the most human thing I'd ever witnessed. Kral appeared at my side, his scales still rippling with residual shock. This is going to change everything, isn't it? I nodded slowly, watching both ships disappear into the void. Everything. Because if a 6-year-old human could look at the galaxy's greatest nightmare and see a lonely person in need of a friend, what else were we missing? What other impossible things might humans teach us about the universe? The report I filed that day became the most read document in Council history, but no amount of official language could truly capture what we'd witnessed. A moment of connection that defied logic, transcended fear, and suggested that maybe, just maybe, the humans understood something about the universe that the rest of us had forgotten. That sometimes the bravest thing you can do is offer kindness to the thing everyone else fears. That friendship has no size limits. That seeing someone truly, without the weight of their history, is its own kind of magic. I headed back to my quarters that night with more questions than answers. But one thing was certain, the galaxy would never look at humans the same way again. And somewhere, on a sanctuary planet, the deadliest dragon in existence was probably hanging a child's crayon drawing on his cave wall, treasuring it more than all the gold and jewels accumulated over 15,000 years, because a little girl had kissed his nose and called him friend. 6 months passed before the incident reports started flooding in. I was reviewing supply requisitions for the outer colonies when my communication console exploded with priority alerts. 17 different council departments were trying to contact me simultaneously, which was either a technical malfunction or the prelude to another galactic crisis. Turned out to be the latter. Vex, we have a situation, High Arbiter Thawne announced, his holographic form flickering in my office. Haven's Rest is requesting immediate diplomatic intervention. My stomach dropped. Haven's Rest was where we'd relocated Emberius. Did he break containment? Start incinerating things? Please tell me he didn't eat the welcoming committee. Worse, Thawne said grimly. He's made friends. I blinked. That's worse? Come to the emergency assembly, you'll understand. The council chamber was packed tighter than a merchant ship's cargo hold during tax season. Delegates from every major species clustered around the holographic display showing live feed from Haven's Rest. What I saw made absolutely no sense. Emberius Dawnscale, the dragon who once reduced a battle fleet to molecular dust, was surrounded by visitors. Not military personnel, or scientists studying him from a safe distance. Actual visitors. Families. Children. A Vraxian tour group was taking photographs while their guide explained the historical significance of dragonfire patterns. This cannot be real, muttered Ambassador Trill from the Corvaxian delegation. Someone edited this footage. Applied some human movie magic. It's completely authentic, confirmed Chief Security Officer Wren. 3 months ago, a family of colonists accidentally wandered into Emberius's territory while hiking. Their daughter, roughly the same age as Emma Webb, approached him before anyone could intervene. She asked if he wanted to see her rock collection. And he didn't vaporize them? Kral asked, having been summoned from his own assignment. He spent 4 hours examining rocks, Wren replied. Then he told them geological stories about planet formation. Word spread. Now he receives approximately 200 visitors per day. He's become the sector's primary tourist attraction. The holographic display shifted to show Emberius sitting in what appeared to be an outdoor amphitheater, specially constructed to accommodate his size. Dozens of children sat in tiered seating, listening raptly as the ancient dragon spoke. And that is how your son was born from the stellar nursery. His voice boomed through the speakers. Quite violent, actually. Lots of explosions, very dramatic. Your ancestors would have enjoyed the show, though the radiation would have killed them instantly. But aesthetically speaking, top-tier birth announcement. The children laughed. Several raised their hands with questions. Emberius answered each one with surprising patience. This is unprecedented, declared Counselor Mikes, a historian from the Archive Worlds. In 15,000 years, Emberius has never exhibited sustained peaceful interaction with civilizations. What changed? Emma Webb changed, I said quietly. She showed him that connection was possible, that someone could see past his reputation. Now he's discovered he actually enjoys teaching, sharing his knowledge, being valued for something other than destruction. But the risk, Trill insisted. One moment of anger, one loss of temper, and hundreds could die. The display shifted again, showing a different scene. A teenage boy, clearly trying to impress his friends, had climbed over the safety barriers and was shouting insults at Emberius, calling him a oversized lizard and washed-up relic. Every delegate leaned forward. This was the test. This was where the facade would crack and the real Emberius would emerge. The dragon lowered his massive head until his eyes were level with the teenager. When he spoke, his voice was quiet but carried perfectly across the amphitheater. Young one, I have lived through the birth and death of stars. I have seen empires rise and crumble to dust. In all that time, I have learned that anger is the easiest response, and patience is the hardest. You seek to provoke me because you feel powerless in your own life. I understand that feeling, but I will not grant you the satisfaction of my rage. Instead, I offer you this. If you wish to feel powerful, work to build something rather than destroy, create instead of tear down. That is true strength. The teenager stood frozen, clearly expecting violence and receiving wisdom instead. His bravado crumbled. To everyone's shock, tears streamed down his face. I'm sorry, he choked out. My father says I'll never amount to anything. I just wanted to prove I was brave. Bravery is not antagonizing the dangerous, Emberius said gently. Bravery is facing your own fears and choosing growth. You came here seeking destruction. I offer you understanding instead. Your father is wrong. You will amount to whatever you choose to become. Security personnel arrived to escort the teenager away, but Emberius stopped them with a raised claw. Let him stay, the dragon said. If he wishes, I would hear more about his struggles. Perhaps my experiences, however different, might provide perspective. The boy nodded, wiping his eyes. He returned to the seating area, and the lesson continued. The council chamber remained silent for a long moment. Emma Webb did this. High Arbiter Thawne said finally. One act of fearless kindness, and she fundamentally changed the most dangerous being in known space. The question is, Counselor Mix said, what do we do about it? This situation is generating complications. Tourism has increased by 3,000%. The sanctuary planet's infrastructure cannot handle the demand. And other entities classified as extremely dangerous are taking notice. That last part made my blood run cold. What do you mean, taking notice? Ren pulled up another display. We've received 17 requests from various catastrophe-class entities requesting relocation to Haven's Rest. The Void Kraken of Nebula 7 wants to be Emberius's neighbor. The Sentient Storm of Praxis 4 is asking if therapy sessions are available. Something called the Infinity Worm just sent a formal application asking about the visitor policy and whether children are allowed to ask questions about multidimensional physics. They want to be understood, I realized. All these creatures we classified as monsters and locked away. They've been isolated for centuries, maybe millennia. Emberius proved they could be more than their worst moments. Now they want that chance too. This is madness, Trill said. We cannot simply release every dangerous entity because one dragon learned manners from a human child. Can't we? Asked a new voice. Everyone turned. Captain Marcus Webb stood at the chamber entrance, Emma holding his hand. Linda stood beside them, looking calm despite being in the center of galactic politics. Captain Webb, Thawne said with surprise. We didn't summon you. No. But you're discussing my daughter's friend. So I figured we should be here. Marcus stepped forward. Look, I'm just a freight hauler. I don't understand half the complicated stuff you folks deal with. But I know what I've seen. Emberius isn't dangerous anymore because someone finally gave him a reason not to be. Emma tugged her father's sleeve. Daddy, can I talk? Go ahead, sweetheart. The tiny human girl walked to the center of the massive chamber, surrounded by delegates from 100 worlds. She looked impossibly small, impossibly fragile. And yet, every single being in that room gave her their complete attention. Mr. Scales isn't bad, Emma said clearly. He was just lonely and sad. When you're lonely, sometimes you get angry because it hurts inside. But when you have friends, the hurt gets smaller. Maybe the other big creatures are lonely too. Maybe they just need someone to be nice to them. Child, Trill said not unkindly. These entities have killed billions. They've destroyed entire civilizations. Friendship cannot erase those facts. No, Emma agreed. But being mean to them forever won't bring those people back either. Mr. Scales told me he has nightmares about the bad things he did. He wishes he could take them back. Isn't it better if he helps people now instead of being locked away feeling sad? From the mouths of children, as the human saying went. The girl raises a valid philosophical point, Counselor Mix admitted. Perpetual punishment serves no rehabilitative purpose if the entity in question has demonstrated genuine change. However, the risk assessment remains concerning. Then manage the risk, Marcus said. Create proper facilities, establish protocols, but give them the chance. Because I'll tell you what the real danger is. The danger is teaching the universe that no matter how much you change, no matter how hard you try, you'll always be defined by your worst day. That's how you create monsters. You tell them they're monsters until they believe it themselves. The debate raged for hours. Security concerns, logistical challenges, ethical implications, historical precedents. Every possible angle was examined, dissected, argued over. Finally, High Arbiter Thawne called for a vote. The measure was simple. Establish a rehabilitation program for catastrophe-class entities, modeled on the success with Emberius, with strict oversight and gradual integration. The vote passed. Barely. But it passed. 3 weeks later, I found myself back on Haven's Rest, overseeing the arrival of the second rehabilitated entity, the Void Kraken. A creature of shadow and nightmare that had terrorized shipping lanes for 8 centuries, was being transported in a specialized containment field. Emberius waited at the designated meeting area. Emma Webb standing beside him. She'd insisted on being present, and after everything, nobody had the courage to tell her no. The containment field dissolved. The Void Kraken emerged, tentacles writhing, eyes gleaming with ancient malevolence. Every weapon system on the planet locked onto it, ready to fire at the first sign of hostility. Emma walked forward. "Hi," she said brightly. "I'm Emma." Mr. Scales said, "You might be lonely too. Do you want to be friends?" The Void Kraken stared at her. Its tentacles stopped writhing. Slowly, incredibly, it lowered itself until one massive eye was level with the small girl. "Friends," it rumbled, its voice like underwater earthquakes. "I do not understand this concept." "It's easy," Emma explained. "Friends are nice to each other. They talk and play and help when someone is sad. Mr. Scales is teaching me about stars, and I read him stories. What can you teach me?" The Kraken was silent for a long moment. Then, hesitantly, "I know the songs of deep space, the music that exists between stars, where light fears to travel. No one has ever wanted to hear them." "I want to hear them," Emma said immediately. "Will you teach me?" And just like that, another monster learned that it could be something more. Over the following months, Haven's Rest transformed. The sentient storm arrived and discovered a passion for meteorology education. The Infinity Worm became fascinated by human literature and started a book club. A being made of pure radiation learned to control its emissions and began teaching physics to university students via shielded holographic projection. Not every rehabilitation succeeded. Some entities were too damaged, too consumed by their own darkness. They remained in secure facilities, receiving care but unable to integrate. We learned that kindness could open doors, but it couldn't force anyone through them. But the successes outweighed the failures, and at the center of it all was Emberius Dawnscale, the ancient dragon who'd learned to use his indoor fire, mentoring other dangerous beings in the art of peaceful existence. I visited regularly, documenting the progress for the council. On one such visit, I found Emberius and Emma sitting together on a hillside, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of amber and gold. "Little Spark," Emberius said quietly, "do you understand what you've done? You've changed the fate of beings who thought themselves beyond redemption." Emma swung her legs, thoughtful. "I just wanted you to be happy, Mr. Scales. Everyone deserves to be happy." Such simple wisdom, the dragon mused. And yet, entire civilizations failed to grasp it. "Tell me, what will you do when you grow older? What great things will you accomplish?" "I want to help more friends," Emma said. "There's lots of people who are lonely and scared. Maybe I can help them too." "I believe you will accomplish exactly that," Emberius said. "And when you do, know that you learned from the best teacher." "You're the teacher, Mr. Scales," Emma giggled. "No, little Spark. You taught me. I merely learned to listen." I watched them together, this impossible friendship between ancient dragon and human child, and understood something fundamental about the universe. Power wasn't about size or strength or destructive capability. Real power was the ability to see past fear and offer connection. To recognize that every being, no matter how dangerous or different, carried the capacity for change. Humans had that power. Not because they were fearless, but because they chose compassion even when fear would be reasonable. Emma Webb hadn't approached Emberius because she didn't understand danger. She approached him because she understood something more important than danger. She understood loneliness, and she refused to let anyone suffer it alone. The galaxy would never be the same. Across 1,000 worlds, the story spread. The tale of a little girl who kissed a dragon and taught the universe about redemption. Some called it legend. Others dismissed it as propaganda. But those of us who witnessed it knew the truth. Sometimes the greatest acts of heroism come in the smallest packages. Sometimes changing the world is as simple as offering friendship to someone everyone else has given up on. And sometimes, just sometimes, a human child can teach an ancient dragon how to smile. As I prepared to leave Haven's Rest that evening, Emma ran up to me, holding something carefully in her hands. "Mr. Vex," she said, using the nickname she'd given me. "I made you something." It was a drawing, crayon on recycled paper. It showed all of us together, humans and aliens and rehabilitated monsters, holding hands under a smiling sun. At the center, a little girl and a dragon, friends, forever. "Thank you, Emma," I said, my voice catching slightly. "I'll treasure this." "Keep it safe," she said seriously. "So you remember that scary things can be good friends if you give them a chance." I promised I would, and I have. The drawing hangs in my office, a reminder of the day a human child taught the galaxy about hope. Because in the end, that's what humans do best. They hope, when hope seems foolish. They extend hands when everyone else builds walls. They see potential where others see only danger. They kiss dragons, and somehow, impossibly, the dragons kiss back.